Food drives the world. Apart from clean water, access to adequate food is the primary concern of most people on Earth. Hence, this makes agriculture the largest and one of the most significant industries the world over. I am Shiva Pinsenya, and you're watching The Diplomatic Encounter. In most African countries, agriculture helps support the survival and well-being of up to 70% of the population. In today's program, we are discussing the relevance of agriculture to any country's good. And to help us unpack the issues, we are joined by the Palestinian and Egyptian ambassadors who will share with us their experiences in their countries in relation to Zimbabwe.
Land in general, it's very important for our people, as land important also for Zimbabwe people. You know, land, it's grandfathers, it's our new generation will live there, and it's memories, it's our culture, our identity, our dignity. So the main pillar of our economy is agriculture.
Of course, agriculture is very important for Egypt, and as you know that Egypt is the oldest agricultural country in the world. Because Egypt, the great historian Herodotus said, Egypt is the gift of the Nile. So by having the Nile, Egypt has started its agriculture since the pharaohs, 7,000 years ago. And so we are the oldest farmers and agriculturers in the world in Egypt, because since 7,000 years, Egypt has been cultivating its land along the Nile Valley. A large part of the Egyptian land, unfortunately, is desert. We have about 90%. We are cultivating only on 10% of our land, because the other 90% is desert, and it's very hard to cultivate. It takes a lot of expenses to transfer the desert into green land because of the water, the need for water. And in Egypt, the rain is a bit scarce, not like here in Zimbabwe. We don't have too much rain, and that's why we depend on the water of the Nile and other forms of water for agriculture.
Unfortunately, as you know, that Palestine under occupation, total occupation. This occupation create every day many difficulties and problems which facing not only agriculture but all fields of the life of the Palestinians, particularly agriculture. For example, no water. They are thefting the water, taking the water away, using the water, and they don't give the Palestinians to use water. Freedom movement. Palestinian people, they cannot move from city to city, from village to village, and it does not help agriculture prosperity in our land.
We also asked the ambassadors how they rate Zimbabwe's agricultural sector since the land reform program, which saw many Zimbabweans accessing land which was previously owned by white minority farmers.
Zimbabwe is doing well, but it can do better, and it can improve in utilizing the land. You have here also water sources, especially from rain. You have a lot of rain here. Zimbabwe has a lot of factors that can improve its agriculture, and it can improve its production of especially strategic crops like wheat and maize for the people to be independent from the outside world. This is an important factor, that when you improve your agriculture and your crops, and you have self-sufficiency in food items, then you are also more independent politically from the outside world, and you do not depend on the outside world in importing strategic crops.
And I think that from the land reform, it doesn't come, the results does not come next day or next year or 2 or 3 years. You will get benefit from this. It's a generation. It's a process, a long process of. But I am sure that Zimbabweans will enjoy the benefit of the land reform after as soon as possible.
The Egyptian ambassador also hinted on a joint venture between Zimbabwe and Egypt.
We have, between Egypt and Zimbabwe, there is a very important project that's being discussed now, to have a joint venture in using the arable soil of Zimbabwe and the fertile soil here to plant wheat and maize by using Egyptian technology. And then to sort of divide the harvest between Egypt and Zimbabwe. So this project is being under consideration now between the Ministries of Agriculture of Zimbabwe and Egypt in order to use the land, the fertile soil here, and the sources of water that Zimbabwe has in cultivating wheat and maize in Zimbabwe by using Egyptian technology and machinery and so forth, and sort of dividing the harvest between the both countries. Well, the African countries have great potential for having agriculture and food security, but this has to be used. You know, that sometimes they have a problem of machinery, of importing machinery and sort of advanced machinery for agriculture. This could also be provided if we are integrating within Africa. There are countries like Egypt which has agricultural machinery. Zimbabwe has good weather and has sources of water. So if we sort of integrate within the African Union, there is more programs and plans for integration within African Union countries. We can have food security and self-sufficiency within the African continent more than what is happening right now. And we can depend less on the outside world.
15 years after the historic land reform, Zimbabwe is actually on track as far as agriculture is concerned. Join us in the second segment as we look at the activities in the contemporary Zimbabwean agriculture. Welcome to the second segment of a diplomatic encounter, where in today's show we're focusing on agriculture and food security. Adiva Machiso caught up with a representative of the ZFU, which is the Zimbabwe Farmers Union, and asked some questions on Zimbabwe in relation to agriculture and food security. Our first question to the representative was, what is the mandate of the ZFU?
The Zimbabwe Farmers Union is the leading farmer representative body in Zimbabwe, which was formed way back in 1991, to be precise, on the 19th of August. But however, it was coming up as a merger of two farmer unions that had merged in 1991, which were emanating back from the 1930s and 1940s. So our vision is to be the leading farmer representative body in Zimbabwe, and our mandate is to represent the interest of farmers. And we basically represent interest of farmers, looking into account farmers like marginalized groups, which are youths, women, and general farmers as a whole. We have also been implementing a lot of youth programs as well, with support from UNICEF in collaboration with various ministries, Ministry of Education and Ministry of Agriculture. We've also been working closely with GIZ, the German Development Cooperation, that has been financing a lot of activities we've been doing to promote youth participation in agriculture. And we've got several other programs we've been doing with even regional bodies such as SACAO, the Southern Africa Confederation of Agricultural Unions. That's just to mention a few, but we have really worked with a lot of partners in the past years. We've been working on mainly empowering and encouraging youth to see agriculture as a vibrant enterprise. So we have of late launched what we call the Zimbabwe Youth Agripreneurship Summit, which we launched the first edition in 2018. So the whole idea of the summit was to bring together youth who are agriculturally focused and who are passionate in driving the next phase of agriculture in this country. We were being driven by the fact that the United Nations predicted that by 2050 the world population will have grown with approximately 2.5 billion to get to 9.5 billion. So this move was a move which we came up with to strengthen youth participation in agriculture, to get the young people involved in agriculture. We were also looking at how much the unemployment rate has continued to be on the rise, and looking at the vast potential that is dormant in the agricultural sector. We have also been doing various exciting and interesting activities, such as the profiling project, where we moved around and documented some success stories of what young people have been doing in the country. To date, we've come up with more than 8 profiles, which are actually uploaded on YouTube and Facebook and various social media sites.
Okay.
And from these sites, you will see some success stories of what young people are doing across the country. Young people who have been able to overcome some of the teething challenges in the sector. So this was just a phase of trying to encourage more young people to be in the agricultural sector.
So how many young people do you have as part of your organization?
We've been training a lot of young people of late. One of the programs is actually targeting to train almost 31,000 young people. We've also been able to set up demonstration plots in more than 50 schools in Zimbabwe, where these demonstration plots are like breeding ground for young farmers. So young people who are passionate about taking agriculture as a career actually go for mentorship in these young farmers clubs. And these are like 50 rural schools in Mashonaland Central and also in Manicaland as well. Our chairperson was invited to a conference in Germany to discuss with farmers on how best farmers can actually become commercial, because she has been growing a lot of crops, which she has been actually doing specifically for export. So after we also held the profiling project, where we uploaded videos of what young farmers are doing in this country online, her profile was also picked, and she was nominated to come and attend the profile in Germany and to also address the conference.
Mr. Chari, can you tell us the challenges that young people face in agriculture?
It's with no doubt that young people have been really facing a lot of challenges, especially penetrating into the agricultural sector. And the summits that we recently held were able to actually open our minds to see what was on the minds of the young farmers. And part of the challenges that they actually highlighted was that youth do not have access to land, because the period the land reform took place, most of these young people were still young, if I could say. And also part of the challenges young people are facing in relation to the productive capacity, the high cost of inputs, and even access to markets as well. They've been coming up as a challenge to young people. And young people have also mentioned how the issue of financing itself, it is reality that nowadays it's difficult to get a loan, and financing activities is actually difficult. So for some young farmers who do not come up from well-up families, they've always struggled to set up some of their enterprises.
What would you say to young people out there?
I would actually encourage those young farmers to sit down and plan how they can tap into the vast potential that lies within the agricultural sector. It's no doubt that wherever there are human beings, the next thing that's needed is food. So the gap in the market continues to emerge, and it continues to increase now that we are also looking at an increase in the population growth. That's an avenue which is being opened for young people who are wise in this point to begin to gear themselves and prepare to take up agriculture in the next generation.
Thank you again for your time.
My pleasure.
You're watching the Diplomatic Encounter, and like you've heard from Mr. Newton Chari, young people, the future is yours. Empower yourself and consider agriculture. You're watching the Diplomatic Encounter. Stay with us.
I decided to come back to Zimbabwe and farm, be able to export what we can grow in Zimbabwe to Europe, where the demand is high. Hi, my name is Ruramiso, and I'm 29 years old. I am a farmer. I studied agriculture. I started when I was 17 years old, where I first did my diploma in agriculture, and then I went further on, went to the UK, where I studied a bachelor's degree in agriculture business management. So far I've worked in both in Zimbabwe and in England. That's when I found out the different challenges we had there, lack of climate, there was a lot of rainfall, and then agriculture is really difficult for them. So people in Europe would rather import their produce because the risks are high if they plant and they get floods. Here in Zimbabwe, we've got plenty of soils. We plant more mainly outside, and we use less technology than in the UK. So when I came back, I thought that is an advantage for me to be able to grow crops here and export to Europe to be able to meet the demand. So I started off with peas, and then I'm going to move on to other horticulture crops because I'm really interested in horticulture crops. That's my main focus. So yeah, so that's why I decided to do them. And they need a lot of diligence, a lot of work, and just being able to produce the right requirements for export. Within 8 weeks, you can already start reaping and then already start getting paid. So it's also a quick way of making money, and then you're able to use the money to invest in different things that you want to do. And and it's guaranteed to be bought anyway, as long as you're diligent with it and produce good quality, because the demand is just too great at the moment for us to meet. So the more people who go into it, the higher chances we are of meeting the demand.
The one aspect that I like about it is, at the end of the day, you're your own boss. You're really taking care of your own crop and growing your own future through that. My name is Francis Chirumuta. I am a 26-year-old farmer farming in Chitowa, Murewa. I remember the first time I had to tell my parents I wanted to be a farmer. They were actually laughing. It took a while for my dad to really be on my side, but then once he's the one that then enrolled me into agriculture college, sort out a few courses that I could go on to, and really catch the fundamentals of farming. We're mainly focusing on potatoes, sweet potato, cabbages, butternut, and a select few other crops. And right now you're in our sprouting house, where we actively sprout